Our Patreoners, thank you so much for being Patreon subscribers. This is session 2 of the pi target, and I'm gonna go into I'm gonna do my best to get as many ideas out as I can without forgetting too much. But here's the tasking again. Just start here with the tasking. Initiate contact, perceive, conceptualize, and describe the irrational number slash mathematical constant known as pi. How does this present itself in nature? How does the concept present itself in man? What are the spiritual implications of this concept and the number itself? Perceive the number in its entirety. What other tangential concepts or processes does pi help to inform? What are the greater implications of pi for our species? And what is this concept conveyed? How is this concept conveyed in symbolic form, both known to our species and unknown? So that's the tasking. Now this is the end of session 1, and I took a break. I resumed the session, and the mind is what was filling my mind, was to explore the notion of the mind. It is a mind. That's what I was perceiving of the target, was a mind. So this and this and these other elements of the tasking were bringing me into a realm of the mind, which prompted the question, what is a mind? What does it mean? What does it mean? Why am I getting this notion, and what does it mean? What is a mind? It's compartmentalized. There are sections within it, areas within it. Our minds are vast, even though we exist in a sphere realm. Our minds are vast within it and way beyond it, in my point of view. Electricity is consciousness. This is the notion that I was getting here. Electricity was coming to mind. A belt or range of the electric spectrum is awareness. And I'm back into the sphere realm here. I'm back into the sphere realm. But I'm also getting this, there's something else going on here. The belt records friction, question mark, because I'm getting this kind of belt thing. And ignition sparks and turns on. Something gets turned on here. It is dormant until a rotational charge creates an input activation, question mark. I'm trying to figure this out. These particles reflect off of the band and send signals to the dormant area, question mark. Then it becomes animated. This is what I'm getting. So here's my sphere. What I'm experiencing here is that some element area of that sphere gets particleized, gets hit with some particle of some sort, and I'm using particle as a generic term. As a result of this area being illuminated, awareness or animation is the result, or is the result from that, is the effect of that. Which again reminds me of this. Here we are as a host is being formed for us to enter into, and there's our band, our electromagnetic field, or whatever this is that is holding us here, holding us together. Is this what our awareness is triggered inside of that, inside of this band of spheres? As we come into the sphere realm here. What is the mind? Electric, biological component, electricity in the synapse. I was getting this idea of electricity moving through parts of the brain, a web of electric conduit, electric carrier, an electric web, sparks, carriers, all this electricity. The awareness moves along an electric conduit. I'm thinking about consciousness and awareness inside of the sphere. If the spin is altered, oh wait a minute, what is electricity? It brings me to this idea, because I'm all about this electricity thing right here. What is electricity? I don't know. And I get the notion here, a hyperspin, components / atoms agitated, altered spin of nucleus. I don't know what I'm talking about. If the spin is altered, the rotation is altered, the element creates a friction, question mark, and is that what electricity is? Is that how it works? I don't know. I'm trying to describe what I'm experiencing. Animation, a reflection of the input. The input goes through a gestation process to become animated, and that's what I was experiencing here. Like a gestation process within the sphere, and a certain element of that sphere then creates awareness and consciousness. Gestation process to animation, awareness, and on-off switch. It reminded me of Saturn. Saturn. It exists within an electric field. It is electric. Electricity is the mind. The mind. I'm talking about the mind. The process of animation, bringing something to awareness, reminds me of Frankenstein. Electric impulse to animation, which also reminded me of the movie Metropolis, and I'll go over that in a minute. The mind is an awareness of electrical pulses reflecting inside of an atom? Question mark? Like this? And I get this idea, this process is being held captive. Trapped electricity, captured electricity here. So again, this is the target, pi. What is pi? Is our attempt to calculate the circumference of a sphere, of a circle. And as we're finding and as we're advancing in our knowledge, that number goes on and on and on as we attempt to, as our ability to measure it becomes more sophisticated. We're seeing that it goes on and on and on. Well, what are we measuring? Are we measuring our reality? Are we measuring the sphere realm for which we are brought into here at conception? The sphere realm. Our host is just a bunch of circles, a bunch of spheres held together here in a force field, which again, this represents the threshold of awareness, the threshold barrier, the subliminal barrier that keeps our mind inside of our bodies, holds us here captive. Here's atoms under an electron microscope. This is the building. This is matter. This is what our reality. This is the reflection of our reality. We exist in the sphere realm. We're brought into the sphere realm. What about this feeling of bondage or of captivity? Reminds me of Saturn. I was getting. What does that have to do with anything? Well, Saturn, as we can see, is based on rings. But in mythology, Saturn is also Kronos. And this was interesting here. By Saturn, they speak to represent that power which maintains the cyclic course of times and seasons. This is the sense that the Greek name of the god bears, for he is Kronos. Kronos is the god of time. Saturn and time. that looks very much like the equation of pi. When I look at pi, when I look at this representation of pi, I think of this. That looks like a clock. Oops. That looks like a clock. And what are we? We're always chasing time. We never have enough. We are prisoners of time. It tells us where to be. Where we are. Time rules us, man. We only got so much of it in as we are programmed to believe here. It has to do with Saturn. Is Saturn our... I was joking in the, well, not so joking for the YouTube. Is Saturn like the Ellis Island of our solar system? I'm thinking so. It governs us. Governs us here. And Saturn is the old devil. Saturn is the old devil. But this was also reminding me of Frankenstein too. What is a Frankenstein movie about? You have a dead body and he connects it, basically battery cables to it, captures a bolt of lightning, comes down, and the electricity animates the body. That's the story of Frankenstein. But it also reminded me of the film Metropolis, 1926, 1928 film Metropolis. And what is Metropolis about? Metropolis is about a civilization that develops technology to create artificial light. Creates artificial light. Not God's light from the sun or electricity, like a lightning bolt, but figures out how to generate man-made artificial light. And as a result, then man is inspired to create an animated version of itself, an AI, an artificial intelligence powered by artificial light. That's what the movie's about. And in a movie, this is considered witchcraft. This is considered sacrilege. That man would create artificial light was blasphemous. But you can see the representations in the movie in here as well. It's symbolic. Metropolis. But what does metropolis mean? The root word metro means measure. Isn't that interesting? Measure? Isn't that what pi is doing? It's measuring. To measure. Well, that was interesting. Has to do also with the metronome. So I looked up metronome. What does metronome mean? Metron plus nomos means controlling or law. Law. Has to do with sound as well. The law? You mean like that which governs our reality here? The law? You go down the rabbit hole. Nomos, the concept of law in ancient Greek philosophy, which is where the name pi comes from. It's like the governing concept of our reality, and then the laws that we were created or we were inspired to govern ourselves with as we move from into our awareness. Also, when I looked up nomos, what did I find? I was like, what? Are you kidding me? Really? It's like a freaking rabbit hole. Really? Oh, bringing me back here. Reminds me of Saturn. The other end of the word metropolis, polis, is the typical structure of a community in the ancient Greek world. It's a community. It's a community. It's like a group of cells. And how do they get together to survive? It's really all about survival. So they can control the surrounding territory or land, just like our cells do. It's a macro representation here. And in my view, it all goes back to pi. Because as I'm going through this is changing my perspective of the world, the reality that we exist in. You know, I'm looking at this now that we exist inside of the spherical realm. And this is probably just one of many. We exist inside of the spherical realm. We're born into it. Our host is generated from it. Our awareness is encapsulated within it. This governs our reality. And pi, in my view at this point, is our attempt to measure it. We're measuring our own reality. We're attempting to measure or resolve the nature of the reality that we are created into, that we're born into. Is that what's going on? I'm beginning to think so. Why on earth would somebody spend so much time calculating this out to millions and millions and millions of digits, which is where they're at now? Like I said in the first one, in the beginning, when Archimedes had the inspiration to explore this type of circumference, it was okay. Well, the circumference is about 3 times the size of the radius. We advanced, and it was, it's 3.1. Well, that's just 3.14. It's 3.14. On and on and on. The more we advance, the bigger this grows. Does that mean the closer we come to some kind of resolution? If we hit that resolution, then what happens? Do we dissolve? Does it collapse within itself? If we were to resolve this question, is that what we're here to do? Maybe that's what we're here to do. Resolve this question. What is the circumference? What is the measurement of a circle? How do we measure this reality that we are brought into? How are we brought through here? Through Chronos? We're on a schedule. That's it. That's session number 2. This was a short one. The rest of them will be coming out, and they get very interesting. This is all very esoteric. It's all very abstract almost, because I'm dealing with an esoteric target here. I'm dealing with a construct, a mental construct. And so the results are reflect that. It's very esoteric, but it was really cool, and it is changing the way I think, which is what I love about remote viewing. I remote view something, and I learn way more about it than if I would have studied it somewhere. That's why I love remote viewing. So this is changing my whole perspective. So that's it. Right after this will be the full session on video for those that want to watch it. And that's it for this session. Thanks so much for for being a Patreon, and the rest is coming. Resume. The mind. The mind. It is a mind. It is a mind. What is a mind? Awareness. Compartmentalized. Sections. Areas. Within. Dimensions. What is the mind? What is the mind? What is the mind? Electric, biological components. Electricity in the synapse. A web of electric conduit. Electric carrier. Sparks. Carriers. A web. An electric web. static. Flowing. The awareness moves along electric conduit. Electric conduit. Energetic. What is electricity? What is electricity? It is hyperspin hyperspin components. Atoms or hyperspin. Agitated. Altered spin. Of nucleus. It's like a like if the spin is altered, or the rotation is altered, the elements creates friction, equals electric, it's like sensory dimensions, AI, tangible, intangible. Electricity is conscious. A belt or range of the electric spectrum is awareness, like the belt records friction. Signal. Mind. Like an ignition. Sparks. And turns on. Is dormant. till a rotational change creates an input activation. It's like dormant area. It's like these particles hit this band, reflect back into an area that is dormant, then it becomes animated. Animation. 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 Yeah, let's see. Animation. 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 A reflection of the input. The input goes through a gestation process. Gestation. If I'm spelling that right. Gestation process. To animation. Slash awareness. On, off, switch. Hey, well, the signal reminds me of Saturn. Electric field. It exists within an electric field then. Or it is electric. Electricity is the mind. The process of animation. Bringing something something to awareness. Reminds me of Frankenstein. Reminds me of Frankenstein, like electric impulse. Two, animation. The mind is an awareness of electrical pulses reflecting inside of an atom. Idea. This process is being held captive. Trapped electricity. Captured. Electricity. Break.